Talk with Tyson Bryden. Come on for the ride. We'll take you inside. Non-stop rock talk. It's non-stop rock talk with Tyson Bryden. Come on for the ride. We'll take you inside.
Welcome to Non-Stop Rock Talk. I am your host, Tyson Bryden. Today, I'm very happy to welcome former singer of LA band Wildside and the host of Get on the Bus, which I believe can be found on YouTube. Is it strictly on YouTube, Drew?
Yes. You can catch the episodes also on Spotify and stuff like that. Yeah.
So anyways, I welcome Drew Rose. How's it going, man?
It's going great, man. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And before we discuss Wildside, I want to talk about Get on the Bus because I've watched various episodes and I love the presentation of the show. And I know it's been going for quite a while, and there was stuff I watched on there. I was like, hey, I've seen this. I've seen all this stuff, but I didn't realize you were behind it until I listened to the Hair Metal Guru interview you did, I think was last year. So
right.
How did that whole thing come to be?
So Jim, who was also the drummer from Wildside, Jim and I put together this thing where I can go back even further, where it was a buddy of mine, Joe, and I, and then we were doing some interviews that really didn't make a whole lot of sense. So backing up, originally the idea was, let's do a documentary on what happened with Wildside. How did it, come together? How did it fall apart? And like so many bands in Hollywood that did get record deals, forget about the guys that didn't get record deals. There were a lot of those guys too, but the guys that did get record deals, they went on to create some great music. And then, the whole industry kind of took a shift and left a lot of guys hanging there, holding the bag going, what do I do now? That was our story. Kind of Wildside. And so let's kind of make a story about that. Let's record that and interview as many people that we know that were somehow connected to that scene at that time. And so we started recording interviews. And as we realized, hey, this is actually kind of some gold here. We don't even, what are we doing making a Wildside documentary? Nobody gives a shit about that. Let's actually do a real documentary. So originally, like I said, it was a Wildside thing. We shifted that over and started an idea that let's make a real music doc and call it Long Live Rock and Roll. And we started creating graphics for it. We got involved with some, people that were kind of pointing us in what direction to take it. And we started doing these interviews. We got on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and we took a film crew with us, set up a suite, and turned it into a film studio. Yeah. And one by one, interviewing everybody on all the bands that were kind of on this cruise. Everybody was kind of trapped together, so it wasn't like they couldn't run off. We were like, hey, come over here. We're doing this thing. And we got permission from Larry Moran, who runs that whole thing, with the Monsters of Rock. And we got permission from Princess or whoever it was, the cruise line. And we were able to do this. And we came home with, tons of material, interviews for days, like, I don't know how many of them, 25, 30 interviews. And we kind of stuck them on a shelf and said, okay, now we got to piece this together, come up with a, whole story arc for this documentary. And as I started to look into licensing all the music, okay, we're going to interview, we just interviewed, Stephen Pearcy and LA Guns and, Eric Turner and all these different guys. Licensing their music became astronomical, super expensive.
Oh, I bet.
And to put out a documentary with, music that didn't represent the band when they were talking about their music and talking about their issues, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so we just kind of dumped that idea, and the content sat there for a long time. I'm talking years. This was 2017. All of a sudden, we're in the pandemic in 2020. I'm living in Nashville at the time. I called Stevie Rochelle. We were having a phone call, just kind of riffing, talking, and he asked me whatever happened to the footage. And I explained it to him, and he said, well, why don't you put it out on YouTube? You know, you probably get somewhere with that, you know? And so talking to Jim about it, we decided let's shift gears and move it to YouTube. And that's when we called it 80s Metal Recycle Bin. And it was kind of a, maybe not so attractive name to some of the guys we were interviewing. They're like, I'm not in the recycle bin. And it was funny, but it was, I guess you could say, offensive to some of these guys who take themselves, you know, pretty seriously, and are out there still doing it, you know. But we continued to do interviews under that moniker. And then, I don't know, it was like, I want to say 22 or 23, Jim decided, you know, I want to, you know, turn this into something bigger and better and something more interesting. What do you think about doing this on a bus, like an old rock and roll tour bus that we convert into something kind of cool? And I said, well, where are we getting a bus, man? You know, and he said, let me figure that out. And he came back with it, you know, and the whole plan, and went out there and looked for a bus. And it wasn't some old rock and roll tour bus. It was this beautiful, modern, contemporary, badass 45-foot bus that he bought in Las Vegas and drove it back to LA. And it took about a year to get it to broadcast quality to what we wanted. And we started doing interviews. Our first interview with the bus was Michael Anthony from Van Halen. So from there, it just started. I think the bus just added a whole new element. It gave us a facelift on our brand. We changed the name to get on the bus, and everything kind of took off from there.
I love the format because the artist is talking and you're the interviewer, but you can hear you, but you're not really mic'd up. It's picking you up, but you're kind of, you know, I love that, how that looks when you watch that on YouTube.
So, you know, that's a question that we've had and I've been struggling with. You know, we've talked a lot about making it where you can hear me a little more.
Yeah.
And Jim, so the way we do this is you're right. We have two cameras. We have a straightforward camera. We have what we call a 3/4, so we don't see his face straight on, but perhaps from the side, but not a hard profile, you know? Yeah. So you can kind of catch the eye on the other side a little bit. And then we have a third camera, which is a roving camera. It's all over the place. You can see it from below, from the side, you know, it's moving. There's a third camera operator. And the question was, should we have a camera on me and should we mic me up? And then it becomes more like all those podcasts you see out there, and it's a little bit more engaging. So I don't know. We've been toying about changing it and giving it a little bit more personality, you know, because the way we do it is, as you know, each question is posed with a title card. So you'll see a title card and figure out what the subject matter is based on what it says. And then, you know, the guy riffs for 3 minutes, and then it fades out and a new card comes up with a new sort of, question or a new, subject matter that we're talking to him about. And that gives the viewer some idea of where we're headed in the interview versus me going, all right, cool. Well, that's great. Now let's talk about this,
like you and I are doing right now. More or less,
right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's just a more behind the music type of VH1 thing that we decided we like, and we use extremely professional equipment and try to, get that great audio. We want it to be clean and crisp and yeah, so there's a lot of work that goes into it. Jim and I do all the editing as well. Like we sit for hours and hours, days on end for any one interview, deciding what stays and what goes. And these guys like, oh God, what's his name? I always forget, the guy, hair metal guru guy.
Anthony Bryant. Yeah.
Anthony Bryant. I'm sorry for forgetting Anthony. You're such a cool dude. I actually got to meet him in person last week or 2 weeks ago at the Tough show in Hollywood. But, these guys crank out a lot of material.
Yeah.
Because they're on Zoom and it's like, all right, this week's going to be Bobby Brown and next week is going to be this guy and that guy. And then, he's putting out more content. And before, I'm still trying to edit, the 25 minutes, perfecting. And then we buy all the photos. So those aren't lifted. So when you hear him talking about his favorite band and we put that photo up, or maybe he mentions he's loves Eddie Van Halen, that photo you see of Eddie, we buy all that stuff. It's all licensed. So nothing has been lifted or taken or, just call it whatever. That way we can sell every episode clean. And all the music's been licensed, everything, so that we can sell every episode to, I don't know, who's ever out there, Tubi or anybody, and maybe someday it'll all live on Netflix or all on, VH1 or something like that, because that's the end game, is to be able to license our show globally as a package, buy 25 episodes and that kind of thing, and not just live on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I love, like I said, I love the look of it, and it's all pro shot. It looks amazing. So in terms of those questions, are you actually asking them before? Because it just kind of, you get the caption and then it comes on and they're talking about whatever the topic is. You must be asking those questions to them before you're rolling.
No. So you're just not. We're a lot of the stuff is being cut and muted or edited out so that you can't. Yeah, no. And so I'll show up. I'll do some research. Like we just did an interview with Steve Stevens.
Oh, wow.
That hasn't aired yet.
Okay.
And he came with a brand new guitar that's being that he's endorsing and all this kind of stuff. So we talked a lot about his career with Billy Idol, right? And we talked about, he's had an incredible career even beyond, or before and beyond Billy Idol. The guy's he's his own artist. So there's a lot out there to consume. You got to, go on and download and research and, kind of like what you do.
Yeah.
And then I put it all down, print out a bunch of stuff, put it on little tiny cards for my notes. And I'll sit there in a chair. Literally, you can't see me most of the time, but I'm like 2 feet from him. And, he's all mic'd up, and I might maybe have a little distant mic, but not much. And I'm just firing away like, okay, man. So tell me about, I got this note here that, your mom bought you this guitar when you were 4. Tell me about that guitar, or whatever. And you don't usually hear me do that.
Yeah.
You won't hear me say that. You might hear me go, oh wow, that's cool, man. So wait, you did this and that, and that's it. But you're not, and the more that we've done these interviews, the more I'm bleeding into it, where we didn't have me in there at all at any point in the first, several of those things. But it's gotten really loose. We try to, make it for the environment, for the artist to feel like, it's not, people get nervous when they sit down and do interviews, I think. Yeah. Not all of them, but some of these guys, they sweat and they get really. I remember doing an interview with Mike Wilton from Queensryche.
Right. Yeah.
And he may not be the most talkative guy in the world, but fuck, man, he was like, this is a guy that gets up on stage in front of, hundreds of thousands of people, when he's on the road and sitting with me. The lights are on him. The cameras are on him. We're all in this room together. And it's like, okay, action. He got really nervous. There's a lot of guys like that. So we try to break up that feeling of let's have fun. Yeah. I had a great time with Lizzie Hale and her boyfriend, husband guy, God, what do I? That's such an insult. The guy that plays guitar in Hailstorm. I don't even remember.
I don't know his name. I'm not a huge Hailstorm fan. I know that I like them and I respect her and I think she's amazing.
I hate that.
But I'm sorry, I don't know his name either, and that's horrible of me. It's all
so bad.
It's all good.
But regardless, I had a great time with them, and some people are really loose and have fun, and some are all business and want to get the interview. How much time do we have, and can I get out of here? Kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, it was funny your reaction in the Steven Adler interview when he said that Nico McBrain was better than Neil Peart.
Yeah. A lot of people.
It was like
a lot of people were. And the room erupted. You just didn't hear most of it, and everybody was, and he's like, "No, man, he really is, because," and he had a really solid answer in his version of what that was, and it's a great piece of material to throw out there later because it stirs a lot of excitement,
Yeah, absolutely it did. And then he was talking about Farm Aid, and which I never knew. I didn't know. I remember when they played Farm Aid and they did Civil War, and he says, Axl said, we're going to do Down on the Farm, a song we never played before. I was like, that's a little messed up.
Oh, if I gave you the raw, uncut version of that interview, it would make history because we were sitting with him and his publicist, who was off camera, obviously, our talent booker off camera, and then the rest of the crew, right? In the room and on the bus. And he would just go on and on about some stuff that she was going like this, like, no way, no, we can't use that. Please make sure you cut that out. Please make sure you don't, and we need to hear this interview before it goes live because we're trying to change his image. We're trying to, make sure that he's not saying things that could become slanderous or have the guy wound up in court somewhere, because it was crazy early GNR stuff that was going on before the record deal, during the first album recording, the first record, and not just implicating the members of the band, some of the guys that aren't in the band anymore, like, Izzy, implicating guys from Motley, implicating just a whole group of people that would just be like, oh man, like this is out there now. And so we're very careful. We in the beginning it was like, yeah, that's great, juicy stuff. We're going to put it out. And then we realized, that, man, this may not be good for everybody. We'll get in trouble. It'll have to come down anyway. Somebody like Steven will get in trouble. And then when it's time for us to do, say, a Nikki Sixx interview, he's going to fuck those guys. I'm not going to do an interview with them. They put this shit out on me, and it's not cool. So we try to, there's a point where we'll say, well, we have to put that out, but then obviously we know the stuff that maybe was said, and because after the interview's over, you get an artist stepping over, going, hey man, you remember when I said this thing? Yeah, I was just kind of rambling. Can you make sure that doesn't go out? Like, we already know. Don't worry, we're not going to put it out.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had guys do the same thing, phone me and say, listen, man, can you take that out? I was like, yeah, no, don't worry about it. But you know what? It's funny talking about that. I just read Vicky Hamilton's book, and there's a lot of shit in there about Guns N' Roses, like when they lived at her apartment, which
I'm sure,
which was mind blowing. I was like, oh my God. I kind of felt bad for her, to be honest with you. It was crazy.
We interviewed Vicky Hamilton back in the Get on the Bus. 80s metal recycle bin days. But honestly, great interview. She talked about GNR. She talked about Faster Pussycat because she was heavily involved in those guys' early, career. And we also talked about how those bands got in the door just before it shut.
Yeah.
During the grunge era, right? And she, because she was still at Geffen when Nirvana dropped.
Yeah.
So we talked all about that stuff, but the truth of it is, I don't think Vicky would have liked that interview to be out there, because I don't think it was shot where to be. It's just the only thing I can say and try to be as nice as I can is that it just probably our fault, not the most, you know, complimentary way of shooting her. It could have looked better, you know? And so putting something out there like that and where, you know, like, oh God, you know, so we just kind of buried it and said, well, you know, we'll see if one day we want to put it out, you know?
Well, it's funny because there's a part in that book that kind of relates back to you with Bruce that she talks about the graveyard train in there as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And how the two guys, that the bass player and the drummer who played in Angora, how they didn't take them on the road. He didn't even tell them. It was kind of crazy. Yeah. I was like, that's wild. I was like,
yeah,
wow.
They hired two other guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wow, what a horrible thing to do. Especially, you know, especially when you've been in the trenches so long trying to get something going, and then, you know, because, you know,
somebody walks away with, yeah, right.
You know, it was a good book. It was a good read. And I mean, for my listeners, I would highly recommend it, especially if you want to know a lot about the scene in LA. Like, she's very descriptive in it. So it was good.
Oh yeah. She was in the middle of it all. I know.
So, I mean, you've had some of the guests you've mentioned, but of course, Michael Anthony, which was a great interview as well. Phil Collen of Def Leppard, Tommy Aldridge, Bobby Blotzer, Dana Strum, Zach Wild. Those are just a few. How do you decide who will be next and about who you want to have on the show next? Or does it just kind of, they come to you? Or do you guys, like myself, you know, I cold contact and I work with a couple publicists that send me interviews? How does that work for you guys?
I guess that's a little similar. You know, it started with us in the beginning, you know, like, who do we know? Who can we reach immediately? Who can we, you know, and you know, the like I was saying, at one point we did the Monsters of Rock cruise and brought everything, this was before the bus, and brought everything onto the bus, and we were like, okay, everyone's here. There's nowhere for them to go.
Yeah.
We're trapping them all and we're going to get them on camera. And then once, you know, the word gets out, you know, that, hey, they shot this guy. Look, I like, and you know, the thing with artists, you know, everybody, whether you're an actor, I think, or a musician, songwriter, performer, if you're in front of an audience, you know, you're vain. Let's face it. You know, you know, a lot of guys like to pretend that they are, you know, artists and purists, and, you know, you'll hear actors say, well, I don't watch my movies. I've never seen a single movie of it. I think Johnny Depp says that all the time. He's like, I've never seen a movie of me. Yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah. These guys are all too vain. They look the part because they're vain. They want to see the interviews that they've done because they're vain. They want to hear the interviews. You know, I'll go back and listen to your interview.
Yeah,
absolutely. This interview, I want to hear it, of course, you know. Now, there may be parts where I'm like, oh, man, why'd I say that? But for the most part, I'm going to probably repost it. I want people to know because, you know, and I got nothing to promote other than get on the bus. It's not like I'm out here going, I'm you know, making music these days. But circling back to your question, they want to be interviewed. Yeah. Most of the time, you know, a lot of the guys they're very busy. And the only reason that maybe they didn't do the interview or can't do the interview is because they're busy. It's hard to nail them down and get in touch with them. We had to cancel and shift and change our interview with Billy Gibbons like 4 times. Every single time we were there a couple of the times and he canceled on us. Oh, yeah. It was a running joke at one point. I was like, we're here. He's never going to do it. You know, he's in the bus next to us. We're parked 2 buses side by side. Yeah. He's in one tour bus. We're all set up in the other. We waited 7.5 hours for him to come over. And then he played a joke on us and said, guys, I can't do it tonight. I'm going to have, and then we were freaking out. And he was like, I'm just kidding. Give me about 20 minutes. I'll come back. We'll do this thing. You know, it kind of went down that way. But for the most part, these guys want to be interviewed. So, you know, but, you know, getting to their publicists, to get the guys that you mentioned, it's not just, send them an email or send them there's publicists, there's wives. A lot of the publicists happen to be their wives. A lot of people that are running their, these legacy bands happen to be, mom. And she's juggling 6 kids and also this maniac guitar player who, like Zach, for example, his wife's kind of running the show. Not kind of, she is. And super important to be sure to go through her to get that done. But he does have a publicist, an amazing publicist that handles a lot of the other acts. So it's always good to go through the publicist because you might pick up 3 or 4 other acts while you're in that, working with that person. We have our own booker. We have several of them, people that go out and book. We pay a fee. So they'll, bring us someone for a fee. And a lot of the times it will be, here's a list of people that are currently coming into town or currently, in Vegas, because we will go to Vegas. And what do you guys think? And I'll say, yay, no, nay. And Jimmy will, Jim and I will talk pretty much on everything. We don't let anything go by without talking to each other first, regardless. And that's including sponsors or anything else that goes on with the bus. We communicate on everything and then we decide together. And we are pretty much in tune. We love the same artists, the same music. We know what we want. We've taken some risks that have absolutely fallen flat on their face. Big, crazy flops without getting into names. But, my vision, and I know Jim as well, was to get this off the ground with hard rock or rock and then find our way to maybe take a course into some other stuff like country. And I don't mean like some, lowbrow country music in the middle of nowhere. I mean like, Nashville artists, some real major country artists. But we found our niche in rock and in hard rock. That's who our audience and our core is. We try to do some different stuff and it really does show in the views. You can tell in the first 24 hours how a video is going to perform or what's going to happen with it. We try to talk ourselves out of it sometimes. Well, good, this is going to be a slow burn or, this one might work if we just wait longer. And it just isn't. It just doesn't ever, usually kick in. Content is everything, though, as you know, as a content creator yourself. The more you have, the more value you have in it, in doing what you want with it, maybe down the road. Yeah. But, YouTube recognizes your channel the more you drop and the more you put out there, whether it be shorts or long form, whatever, they see it and they also recognize your channel through their algorithms. So it's important to keep it coming or get out. You got a choice to just stop or you got to keep the engine rolling, and because they'll pull you out of that, that algorithm if they see that you're just not putting it out, And as I was mentioning earlier, Anthony does most of his shows, all of his shows on a Zoom call, so it's much easier to get Peter Chris or somebody who may not be in your city or able to get on the bus, on a Zoom call, because, but that's not our format. That's just, I've thought about, Jim and I have talked about, maybe we should try to, and then it's like, cause we've been offered, Sticks and Cheap Trick and all these different artists while they're on the road, and we'll just do a quick Zoom. And are you sure you guys don't want to, and we're like, I don't, we would break format, and I think our fans would right away go, wow, what happened here? Yeah. So, but to answer that was a long answer for that question. Yes, okay. We have people that help us book. Sometimes we know someone will get a direct booking. Most of the time it's coming through one of our booking agents that we work with.
This might be a strange question, but it is probably a valuable question. Your music that you guys use on the show, because my intro is not, my intro is AI. For everybody that's listened to, my intro is AI, and I had to get it, I got it off a site and I had to copyright it or whatever. But Your music sounds like the guitar player, whoever's playing on some of that stuff, that sounds real.
You know, what's interesting about that is when we started it with, like I said, maybe making a documentary for Wildside, obviously that music would have to, we would have access to that in some way.
Yeah.
But then when we shifted gears and said, well, let's do this like a movie, and we couldn't use those artists' music and then shift it over to YouTube, we had already explored a lot of music libraries out there. There's some really bad ones. And making movies for many, many years myself, working in film production and understanding the difference between, canned music, bad music, and professional, we were able to find the right music library. As a matter of fact, the music library we started with for 80s metal had Eric Turner and why can't I remember Eric's partner in crime, bass player?
Jerry Dixon.
Jerry. And so Jerry and Eric had and I am getting so old. I can't remember anybody's name anymore. It's terrible.
It's all good.
Only 61. Eric and Jerry had their own library with this company. So you could go in and it was called Warrant Rocks or something like that. And I was like, holy shit, this music's great. It's got all this kind of Warrant flair to it. The guitars are real. It's great. So I called up Eric and found out that they were doing this as a side gig, making money, and that it was really them doing it. And then we ended up jumping out of that library and picking up another one with a new company called this Universal Music for Creators, which is a arm to Universal Pictures. So they have their own, you can license music from them. It's basically, all the stuff they do on the side. And there's so many cool artists. Like, do you know a drummer named Brian Tichy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's played with everybody. He's so good.
Yeah. So Brian's got a whole library on this thing with Universal. All these guys we know, Mark Ferrari, all these guys we know have their own set of music that they've written for years that's in this library. So we try to pull and take music that kind of matches what maybe what the artist might play on a bad day. Because it doesn't really hold up to the artists themselves, but it's close. We get a lot of questions all the time about the music. Hey, the guy will write or a fan will write, hey, at 23 minutes and 6 seconds, there's a song that sounds just like rap. Is that Warren DeMartini, or is that, and so it's pretty cool that we kind of nailed it each time, and we try to keep doing that as we, drop these videos.
It's very cool. I mean, I noticed pretty much as I was listening to it, I was at the gym this morning and I had a bunch of the episodes on and I was going through them and I was like, I got to ask that question because I'm curious about this music because it does sound real. So thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, it's all real.
Yeah.
We have to post a license with YouTube that the place we're getting it from, and all that kind of stuff. And everywhere else that we do it with Spotify and everybody, everybody's got to have some kind of clearance.
Yeah.
And we take all those legal measures. So, yeah.
So upcoming episodes. So you mentioned Steve Stevens. Who else is on the slate?
You ever heard of a guy named Dwayne Allman? Devin, his son.
His son. Okay. Yeah.
Devin Allman is an amazing touring guitar player with a great band, like Southern rock meets blues, but really edgy, really great. We interviewed him along with Dweezil Zap. I don't know how long ago. We managed to get to Dweezil. We put Dweezil's video out there. We just haven't gotten to Devin. I'm trying to think. We have a brand new, really good Eddie Trunk interview that we just got. I don't know what it was. It was like 2 months ago. It's been a while. I'm trying to think who else. As I mentioned, Steve Stevens. Do you know Billy Morris?
Yeah, from Warrant, played in Warrant and plays for Stevie.
No.
Not
I'm
that
sorry.
Billy Morris?
Wrong guy. I missed. I confuse the two all the time. Billy Morrison.
Billy Morrison. No, I don't know if I do.
So it's funny because Billy has a movie, a small short movie says, who the fuck is Billy Morrison? Billy Morrison is the other guy on the other side of the stage playing guitar for Billy Idol. So you have Steve Stevens on one side and you got Billy on a Les Paul on the other side. He's his coolest British guitar player. He used to play bass for the Cult. And he's been around forever. And so we've got an interview with him. I mean, there's a whole list of guys. I'm looking over here at my list to see if I can remember, but I know there's, I don't know, 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 interviews that are in the can. Oh, Ricky Rocket.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on Ricky right now. He's actually on the edit screen, so we're cutting him. He's got a book coming out.
I ordered
in
it
the coming days. Yeah, and so we're kind of trying our best to get it to time when the book's actual release is. Maybe we'll be a couple days late, but it'll be around the same time. He talks a lot about his early days with Brett. You know, when they kind of, because those two kind of grew up together as buddies, and so he talks a lot about that. He talks about his struggle with cancer, you know, when he found out about all that, and that he's cancer free, and some of the stuff that he went through during those days, the possibility of a new Poison reunion. He talks about, you know, it's a great interview, and he's one of those guys that isn't afraid of the camera, isn't shy at all.
Yeah.
He talks about all the makeup on that first record and why that came out the way it was, and it wasn't intended to look that way, and it was just a lot of stuff that just happened to happen, but wasn't planned, but was key in their success, if you think about it. So it's actually pretty cool the way that we kind of unraveled all that stuff. So it was a really good interview. And I think the same day we did Steve Stevens. So we had a double shot that day. And what happens a lot of times is we'll get one booking and then our agent will call us and say, hey, do you want to do another one today? As long as the bus is on the road, and we'll go and park somewhere where we can fit the bus in a centralized location, and the artist will just kind of hop over and do the interviews with us. So yeah,
that's cool. I look forward to that one. It was funny because I mentioned to you before we started that our 11-year-old is into Bret Michaels, and we had Look What the Cat Dragged in the car last night, and she's looking at the picture and she's like, what is with Ricky Rocket's picture? Why does his makeup look like that? As you're talking about it. So I will make sure she listens to that interview so that she can hear what he has to say about that.
Oh yeah. It's a good one, and pretty proud. We just dropped an interview with, I think in our market, in our, you know, sort of genre, he's a bit of an unknown, but I recommend the interview. He's great. It's a guy named Alex Gonzalez. He happens to be the drummer of a band called Mana.
I saw that.
And Mana is like, they are without a doubt the biggest rock band in the Latin community, you know, globally.
Really?
Any Latin country, Mana is the Bon Jovi.
Wow.
And not just big. I'm talking, what did he tell me? 13, 14 nights sold out at the LA Forum. You know, that's
crazy.
Insane. They hold the record. I think they hold the record, or they're over Bruce Springsteen in LA's most sold out shows at a venue that size. They are like massive. But, you know, you tell most of the people on a channel like ours, hey, have you heard of that? They might go, oh, I don't know, you know, because it's a Spanish speaking rock band.
Yeah. That's cool though.
But he's a cool guy. He plays drums for them. He's sort of the band leader, and he knows everybody. You know, like he's got metal projects on the side that he's doing with all these guys from other metal bands. So he's a cool guy to interview, and we had a great time with him. But we'll see how that does.
Cool. I actually did. I started watching it and then I got sidetracked. I had to go. You know what I think it was? And I'm going to go to this. For the first time today, listened to the Wildside, the second album from 95.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked it. And I'm not a big
You've
grunge
never
guy.
heard it before? You
I had
said?
never heard. I remember when it came out, and I knew that you guys had shifted gears. So I was like, I don't think I can, because I wasn't a grunge guy. I wasn't into.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I never listened to it. I was like, no, I think I'm just going to pass. And I finally listened to the whole thing for the first time today. Like, it's on YouTube. The whole album's on YouTube. So
You know, the thing with that record is, I think it was rushed because we were approached by like a micro label, rushed because we didn't have the material. I wanted to bail out of Wildside entirely. So did Jimmy. In fact, we had another band. We had another band name. We had other guys. And we got a phone call from this producer that had done all the Wildside, let's call it Young Guns demos.
Yeah.
The guy that did like Just Another Night and a bunch of other demos, who's actually a really good producer, a good guy, kind of, bouncing around LA. He was doing a lot of demo stuff for bands. And his unfortunate thing was every time the band got signed, the label would have the band work with a different producer and not this guy. And it just kind of sucked for him. A guy named Dito Godwin.
I remember. Yeah, he did. He's on his name's on the Wasted Years, right?
Yes, because he was part of some of those tracks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dito, he actually went on to be pretty successful in his own way, but he came to me and said, I got this little label that, I'm kind of partnered with, and we want to put out your next record. I really believed in you guys, and Capitol fucked that all up. I go, well, we're not Wildside anymore, man. Have you read the news? This kind of stuff doesn't work. And he said, well, we could do whatever you want. I want to use the name because there is a name and there's a brand. And I go, yeah, but you shift gears and you lose those fans, because it doesn't work that way. And he goes, well, let's find somewhere in the middle. And a lot of back and forth. And like I said, rushed and not thinking. I needed the money. And, you kind of do some stuff because you want the money, and some stuff you do because, your heart's in it more, So this was, I needed the money project, and not considering that there was a band name and, a brand that people kind of looked for in a sound. And during that time, it was rough. Bands like Wildside weren't making it, they weren't. I think even, you go back and look at like Warrant's records in those days, they were really struggling to find a way to blend in. All of them were. Everybody was trying to make that sort of bad grunge record, let's call it. Still great music, but probably not the best grunge music in the world. Grunge in the truest sense of the word. You know what I mean? And what that was, I think. But that album has some good songs on it. It's got some songs that are mixed pretty good, and it's got some songs that are mixed really bad, where you can almost not hear me. And so if you listen to the whole thing, maybe with headphones or something, you can hear some of that stuff. But otherwise,
listen to it.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's like, wow, I can't even hear what the guy's saying or what's going on here. And that was with Bruce from Graveyard Train. And he just had a certain style. It was really, really different than Brent. And as much as I tried to bring him in and get him to play a little edgier and distort his guitar a little bit more and give me that chunkiness that I was missing from Brent, he was more like Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's a masterpiece, but not what I was hoping for. And the results are there,
I mean, points on that album, there's, like you saw, it's got a STP sound and it's got an Alice in Chains sound. So it worked. And I thought your voice translated great for that style of music. You could do both, which I thought was amazing. That's what I enjoyed the most, was that vocally it was incredible. And Bruce's guitar playing was great. It was just different from Under the Influence. Obviously, it was like a big departure.
Yeah, we went on the road with that record and really, really made it a lot more dirtier. Like it was a lot more edgier and a lot more harder on the road, and filled up a lot more. And then we blended our own stuff from the first record into the second record on the set in a set, and it worked out pretty good. The fans kind of acknowledged it and accepted it. But we got halfway into the tour, and I was calling the offices of the label to find out why. We're supposed to be in all the Walmarts everywhere. That's what we were told. And I was going into Walmarts every city to check, and I wouldn't find them. I might find one cassette,
Right.
And I was like, God, I'm calling the offices. No one's answering. And finally I got a hold of Dito away from the office, and he gave me the bad news that the label bankrupt. It was out of business, and so were we at that point. And that's when I got home. We got home, and the whole thing imploded.
So where are those? Who has those masters?
That would be a great question. Jim and I we've said it a million times, because we were at the helm. Jim and I were pretty much at the helm. Jim came up with a lot of that material originally, and would come to me with lyrics and grooves and stuff. And we would then bring it to Bruce, and the three of us wrote that album together. So Jim is like, we should get those 2-inch and remix this thing, but it was on the news later, like I want to say somewhere 5 years later, that the guy that owned the label was found murdered in a junkyard car lot here in LA. So I don't know where those masters are, and Dito's passed away, and they're long since gone, and who knows. I mean, my guess would be that Dito had him forever stuck in a closet and hung on to him, and that's the kind of guy he was. But
wow,
I didn't know how to get a hold of him, and this was before social media and things like that.
Yeah, that's too bad. Now, I mean, I'm sure copies to buy on eBay or wherever are probably expensive. Have you ever looked?
Oh yeah, it's like eBay stuff is like $50 to $100 for any kind of like
Anything.
CD, or
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody would want a cassette, but yeah, CDs or vinyls out there. And I know that the first album was reproduced on vinyl, and some company, took it. And yeah, they've you can get it in different colors and all this kind of stuff. And so
that's funny though, because I know with that label, because I talked to Johnny Gioeli about the Hardline album and Johnny D about Britney Fox, and both of those, they did not remaster those for vinyl. And they kind of swooped in and kind of did it under their noses. Did they do the same with you guys?
Yeah, I was informed. And so what I found out was this, you can call like a company, in our case, Capitol Records or EMI, and say, I don't think it's EMI anymore. I think it's, I want to say
Universal. Sony?
Universal. You're right. It's Universal. And they will, you can call them and say, look, I want, reproduce this album, and it's for this territory, and I want it for this long, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and I want to put it out on vinyl and whatever price. And they go, okay, well, here's the price.
Yeah.
Do it. And so that's how these things pop up. Because I was like, what the hell? I remember I got a phone call or a text message from Mark saying, did you do this? And I said, me? No. And then, we asked Jim the same. And of course, Brent was all mad, thinking I was behind it, and we're all making money on the side. And we didn't, I'm like, I had nothing to do with this. It happened in France too. Same thing. You could buy
CD
Wildside vinyl out of a company in France.
Wow.
And what was funny about that was they're not just selling it in France, they're selling it worldwide, but they only licensed it for the French territory, or something of that nature. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about eBay. So I actually got this
Yeah.
on eBay.
I have one of those on the wall somewhere.
And then of course the Chinese pressing, of which I think you told me that you had. I know Mark told me he had one of these.
I have one. It's framed up here. It's got the same sticker, but in a different spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just gave Jimmy one. I bought a second one. It's a Korean version.
Right.
And I've had it forever in plastic wrapping. And I gave it to him for his birthday last week.
Really?
And he was thrilled. Yeah, because we didn't buy it. We just didn't go out and buy,
Right.
Stevie from Tough said, you should buy it. It's got a double thing and you can get got a gatefold thing that opens up and it's got a colored vinyl on it and it's really, really cool. You should get one. And I said, I don't need one. I got vinyl coming out of my ears from years ago that I bought on eBay,
Yeah. And I did.
My wife and I used to go on eBay and she would flag all the Wildside stuff and watch the sales on them and then, at some point make a bid or buy now or whatever on some of the stuff. So we got a bunch of it. And the truth of it is at this point, as old as it is, and it's really just for my kids.
Yeah.
Something for them to go, yeah, that's my dad, and every once in a while I'll my daughter who's 18 will say, yeah, we were cranking your music cruising in the car the other day, me and my friends, and so
That's awesome.
It's gotten to that point, which is cool. That's
very cool.
To me, the biggest compliment of all,
Like I have a book full, like I bought all those press photos and I got press kits on eBay. This goes back same time I was buying these vinyls. And I think that vinyl cost me like $10 with shipping. It's when vinyl people weren't buying it anymore.
Right.
So I went on eBay and I was like, I wonder if it's there. And I bought a whole bunch of stuff. And I have a book full of press photos and press kits from a lot of the bands that I bought on eBay. And they were costing like at that time, like $10 for like the photo and the press package. So I've got a ton of those, and that's where I got that. And getting back to the licensing of the album, a buddy of mine was a guitar player, and I'm sure you remember this band. You guys were label mates, Canadian band Slick Toxic.
Yeah, sure.
And
what was the singer's name?
Nick Walsh.
Nick Walsh, yeah.
Yeah, Nick Walsh. And their guitar player is Kevin Gale, one of the guitar players. He's a good friend of mine. And we were talking forever about trying to get that album out on vinyl. And it's I don't know how it ended up there, but Capitol actually sent it to Calgary in a museum somewhere at the university. All the tapes are there. And Universal sent it there. It's a very bizarre thing.
I spent years with Capitol before it became a Universal conglomerate thing,
Yeah.
Directly dealing with a legal team at Capitol trying to get someone to give me a number. Like, how much money would it cost for me to buy those mixed masters back or the 2-inch master reels to, maybe consider. I don't know that the album needs to be remixed. It's pretty perfect, but maybe just I'll get all that stuff. And I just could never get anybody to get on the phone with me. It was always as if, well, that's a library catalog stuff and we want to maybe use it someday and maybe have it for this or with that. And, they never did anything with it. It just became one of those kind of like Slick Toxic. They didn't, there's a lot of bands that got signed to Capitol and just nothing ever happened to it. We happened to be signed to the label, and the same year it was some kind of I think it was Capitol's 50th anniversary. Like number 50.
Yeah.
So they dug a hole, they busted open the sidewalk, which, if you're aware, in front of the Capitol Records building is the Hollywood Walk of Fame part of it. So you've got like all these stars. I think the Beatles are right in front there with their star and all these different. They broke open one of the marble sidewalk planks and dug a hole and put a capsule in this hole of everything marked that year for the 50th year, which included our album, our CD, and it's down in there, buried in some sealed
That's
thing.
so cool.
And then repaved over, and then the marbles back over the top as if nothing's better, and I don't know if they take it out in 50 more, but we're well over 30, so we'll see what happens.
Easy, man. I didn't know that. That is wild. Now,
That's cool.
I mean, in terms of the Slick Toxic stuff, we got the full list of everything they had. Videos, demos for the next album. They got dropped before that album came out. They ended up on an independent as well up here in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, which brings me to my next question. That 20th anniversary version of Under the Influence that's on streaming, why did they leave off Monkey See, Monkey Do? Did you guys have any part in that?
No, it's a complete mistake.
And they put on a song called 6 Feet Under.
That's supposed to be an extra track.
Yeah. Yeah, and Monkey See, Monkey Do's not on it. So,
yeah, Mark asked the same question, and all I could come up with was, it's just a mistake. Had nothing to do with Jim Valance or anything about who wrote it with the band or whatever, because that's a co-written song from a guy up in Vancouver.
Yeah, who wrote with? Was that Bryan Adams guy?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Scorpions, Bryan Adams. I mean, he's like a rock. I don't even know if he's alive anymore. It was a long time ago, but yeah, no, just a mistake, like, oh, you missed that one. And there you go.
It's so weird to listen to it in that order, though. You listen to it and go, wait a second, there's something wrong here, because you're so used to hearing it that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, Drew, I want to thank you for your time today and for joining me. And it was great talking about Wildside and Get on the Bus, which seems to be going strong, and there's lots of episodes coming up. So is there anything else you'd like to add before I let you go?
No, just, I appreciate it. I would love it if people spend some time going to our YouTube channel, which again is Get on the Bus. We also have getonthebus.com. We also have our Instagram, which is hugely popular, Get on the Bus TV. So that's you can search that on Instagram, and we're on Facebook. We're everywhere. TikTok, yeah, Get on the Bus. We're all over the place, where you'll get a lot of glimpses of the episodes. But the full episode, if you want to sit for 20 minutes and listen and watch and get in on the fun, that's exclusively on YouTube. And we are also sponsored, I want to mention, by DW Drums. We're sponsored by Schecter Guitars, and we are sponsored by Good Boy Vodka, which is a really cool vodka company. They make vodka seltzers and stuff like that. So they're also a big sponsor of ours. And so go check it out. What can I say?
Yeah, that's cool. Guitars, drums, and vodka. I like it.
Right. It's a great combination, right?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of go, alcohol and guitars and drums kind of go hand in hand. So,
right. Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Drew. Take care.